Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary or the situation report for the day of 869 to 870 for the 11th to the 12th of July. This is a very special SITREP because I published this on the main channel because I want to promote the DPA War channel. So for those that would love this kind of situation report, do follow over on the DPA War channel because no, so that the main channel I can do more things, I can publish other stuff other than just Ukraine War SITREPs. So anyway, we have some massive news. Anyway, by the way, I just want to add, this will be done in the delayed telecast on the War channel as well. It's probably going to doom, going to like collapse and a crash, but whatever. Massive news developments over the past 24 hours. The situation report, the frontline changes report for yesterday, that has already published once yesterday for the things happened the day before, for the 11th of July. So now we are talking about the 12th of July. There's still a lot of frontline change and massive changes over at Sonitsky Kozachok, Liman Pershi, Makievka, Rozolivka, Klishevka, Zalizny, Yurivka, Novo-Alexandrivka, Novoselivka, Persha, and Uruzhaine. And very big changes. Like these are all very significant change. So good news for the Ukrainians first. Over at Sonitsky Kozachok, the Ukrainian forces have retaken the entire border town or border village over at this opposite of Lozovaya Rudka. So the Ukrainian forces have basically retaken the entire settlement, and it doesn't seem like there is some kind of fighting being reported. So I think the Russian recon forces or special forces basically have run away. Basically, after causing all the trouble, they have maybe distracted the Ukrainians enough, pulling in enough resources from the Ukrainian side, or maybe it failed to pull enough Ukrainian resources to this side. It could be either way. Maybe the distraction failed. That's also possible. The Russian forces have retreated back into Russia, and the Ukrainians have retaken the settlement. So this is a frontline change, which is pretty positive. At least there's one less thing to worry about for the Ukrainians, because it's a bit like mosquito. The mosquito just flying around you, even though it doesn't kill you, it just makes you go crazy. The next frontline change is over at Liman Pershi, over at the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, Ukrainian forces geolocated on the southwest of Liman Pershi, and this shows the Ukrainian forces have actually retaken part of the forest around the Liman Lake region, which means that this is actually a Ukrainian capture around this area here, and thus invalidating some of the Russian claims. The Russian claim is still pretty advanced, but it looks like the Ukrainian claim is most likely more accurate. And of course, this is not part of the Ukrainian claim, so this is actually a pure capture by the Ukrainian forces. And if I zoom out a bit, you can actually see where this location is. We have this Sinkivka, and the Ukrainian forces basically advance over in this forest region around Liman Pershi. So Kupiansk around here. So anyway, this is the frontline change over at Liman Pershi. The next frontline change is over at Makievka. So at Makievka, there is a very important update. Russian forces is geolocated at the very end along the Zerebets River. This is actually a continuation of a previous advance that saw the Russian forces geolocated around here. This time around, they have proceeded all the way to the end of this area, basically cutting the town in half. So this Makievka is now cut in half, and looks like I'm not sure how the Ukrainians going to reconcile the situation around here. And I believe that if the Ukrainians are in the main residential district region, I think the Russians will just push down and capture the rest of this. So this is probably what's going to happen soon. But that's part of the analysis. We'll talk about this later in the strategy and tactical reporting. And the next frontline change is over at Rozdolivka. We move all the way to Siversk front. So if you are lost, just now Makievka was here. So we are at Siversk front. There is some updates. The Ukrainian mapping has finally give up the claims the southern half of Rozdolivka. They have admitted that the Russian forces have firm control over in the southern half of Rozdolivka. So this is an invalid this claim by the Ukrainian side. which also confirms that at least the Russians have half of Rosolivka. But according to the Russians, they have full capture of this settlement. So we will just continue to wait for more corroboration. And talking about corroboration, finally, after the long time of claim at Klishchiivka that the Russians have captured Klishchiivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, on the 22nd of May, and since then we have no corroboration whatsoever. This time around we have one geolocation pretty much over on the western part of Klishchiivka on the high ground. So this is a massive no geolocation, because this would essentially have repercussion into how we perceive the front line. If they are on this high ground here, which means that there's a high chance that everything over in Klishchiivka, all the settlement, all the buildings may actually be under Russian control. But I do not want to be so bullish into mapping it all the way up here. So the mapping here, I only draw to this point to acknowledge that the Russians managed to go all the way to that point. And which means that there's a high possibility that the Russians actually may have captured everything else in the north. If not, the Ukrainians are currently in a salient over in the northern part of Klishchiivka, which would be a problem if the Russians continue to cut down from the north and then they push out from the south, which is a pincer, which will encircle the Ukrainian forces over in this northern part of Klishchiivka. But we do not know what's the actual situation because the Russians have claimed to have captured Klishchiivka since 2 months ago. So anyway, whatever it is, this is a massive frontline change in terms of based on the geolocation, which have a great repercussion for how we perceive the tactical and strategic situation around here. The next frontline change over after Klishchiivka is over in the New York front at Zalizny. So over at Zalizny, Russian forces indeed have punched out from this direction towards into Zalizny itself, and this is the first confirmation of Russian forces enter into Zalizny, and they have basically penetrated through. Not sure where the Ukrainians are going to hold the defenses. There is a lot of trench lines around this area which the Russian forces could just bypass and punch through the center. Geolocation of a deployment point, allegedly a Ukrainian position getting struck by a guided missile. So which means that the Ukrainians are nearby and the Russians are punching through, and we're not sure exactly how far, because this is just a geolocation. The actual Russian position may actually be way further. Ukrainian forces are trying to push back the Russian forces for sure at this moment. According to the geolocation information by Crimea Caprice, there's a tank counterattack against the Russian forces at this position. So let's wait and see how this develop. So that's all from this area. The next frontline change is over at Yurivka. Russian forces continue to expand and consolidate control over this massive foothold in the southern part of New York that allows them to continue to punch northward up into the intestines. I mean the New York stomach, the stomach of New York, into the bowels, the bowel of goodness, democracy, and freedom. So unfortunately, it's really up to the bowel now. It's getting really a bit high, so it's gonna come out of the mouth very very soon. All this shit. So it's getting really bad. The Ukrainian forces really need to do something about this. But I'm not sure. They might not do anything because there is heavy entrenchments all around here. So who knows? Maybe the Ukrainians have a plan. They're gonna lure the Russians into a trap and smash them in one fell swoop. Who knows? No, don't underestimate the Ukrainians. Maybe this is just a ploy, to draw the Russians into a kill box. So whatever it is, of course, I don't really believe that's going to be the case, but never say never. The next frontline change is over at the Avdiivka front, over at Novo-Alexandrivka. Russian forces have expanded control in this area here. The frontline change previously was from here. They're going south. Now they are expanded their control over the northern part, and extended a bit more towards Vodizenka. So the frontline change is this one. This is the one. This is the frontline change. Okay. This frontline change here we have already covered in the previous frontline changes report. So whatever it is, this is the massive frontline change over at Vodizenka. The next frontline change is over. I think, let me see. Oh, these are all, no, I'm wrong. These are all recent. So the entire area here actually is all Russian capture. They expanded their control. So their finger has expanded in some kind of feast, no? Like, no, they like that. So no, they basically expanded their foothold, and this will expand their control to attack Vodyzenka. Otherwise, they're going to crash into these Ukrainian heavy trenches. So no point to do that. The next frontline change after Vodyzenka. Let me see. Oh, that I already covered. Oh my god, I confused myself. Okay, after that, whatever it is, the next frontline change is over at Novoselivka, Persia. Massive change around here. The Russian forces have taken everything north of the Novoselivka, Persia, and they have attacked from the northeast and penetrated into the center of Novoselivka, Persia. Then everything in the north, including the heavy fortification, is now all under Russian control. Massive change. And if you go into the details, you can see that the Russians have actually taken one of the junction as they continue on from the industrial zone, and they have also attacked from the northeast, and they will be able to attack in all directions around here. So this is the frontline change around at Novoselivka, Persia, and there's one final frontline change is over at Uruzhaine. So at Uruzhaine, massive news. Russian forces is on the verge of capturing Uruzhaine. Basically, we have already geolocation of Russian forces flying a flag all the way in the northern part. This is by the Marine Corps. This is the latest geolocation, and there is a high chance that with this geolocation, it means that the entire area here is also captured by the Russian forces. But I do not want to jump ahead. I'm going to wait for some declaration from certain sources, especially the Russian Defense Ministry, on the capture. Otherwise, I have only reported about this one. This is the only one I reported. And then the next report I saw was this. This was the based on the geolocation of the Russian forces. And the latest one is this one. This geolocation. So the Russian forces basically have expanded their zone. Basically, they have just walked through the entire place. I don't think there's any more resistance. This is the only one that was geolocated, and this was a Ukrainian tank that was attacked while it was retreating. So it's safe to say that the Ukrainians have abandoned Uruzhaine as we speak. So this is the latest and the most significant frontline change, which may constitute the capture of Uruzhaine. And the next battle is going to go all the way to Blahodatne towards Velika Novosibirsk. It's going to make massive tactical and strategic differences. So anyway, these are the frontline changes report. So before we go on, press the like button, subscribe. And if you're not subscribed, do subscribe. And of course, do subscribe over at DPA War as well, because the situation report, the SITREP, this kind of summary will be published on the War channel, so that I can do more on the main channel. So anyway, we go into the strategic and tactical reporting. First thing first is at Sumy. Russian forces have gone into heavy harassment. They heavily harass the Ukrainians over in this region here, with fighting reported at Novenke, Pazivka, and this place called Vasilivka. They attack in 3 different directions. Basically, the entire area here is under attack. So let me stop my Steam. So the entire area here is under attack. There is no confirmation of capture yet. The information of this attack is from the Russian Defense Ministry themselves on the 11th of July. There is no report of this thing on the 12th, which means that this is just a one-off harassment, which could be just fire attack. But you can see that based on the cluster of the former harassment and attacks in this region, this area moving towards Sumy could be a future attack vector by the Russians. And this is also, of course, the closest point from Kursk to Sumy. There's a highway all the way, which makes perfect sense for the Russians to concentrate on this direction, moving into Sumy if they choose to capture Sumy someday. Which is why having all this attack in this region here to weaken the Ukrainian defenses makes sense. But tentatively, I don't think the Russians need to do this. because they could just expand the Kharkiv front if they want to. So talking about Kharkiv front, we go into this Kharkiv front, and clearly the Ukrainians have captured Sonetsky, Kozachok, as mentioned in the frontline changes report. And like I said, if the Russians really chose to, they could have just stayed in this area here, but they did not. They withdrew from this border town after making a name for themselves, and then causing some embarrassment for the Ukrainians. Like I mentioned before, this area here is pretty difficult to reach because the roads here are not very developed, and the Ukrainian forces probably spent a long time getting here and are trying to put up a good fight against the Russians, only for the Russians to just run away. So this is just a waste of resources for the Ukrainians, but they have no choice because they have put themselves into this box that they have to fight back for all the land that they lose, and this create tactical and strategic inflexibility for the Ukrainian forces, which actually caused the death of a lot of people because you are fighting battles that you shouldn't be fighting. Over at the Lipsy sector, Russian forces are attacking over at Klipoke as well as Lipsy. Ukrainian forces allegedly was counter-attacking according to Ryba, the pro-Russian source, on the 11th of July. Otherwise, the Russians are the main one pushing, and there is a Russian airstrike being geolocated very close to where we have marked the front line, clearly show that the Ukrainians are still in the area of Klipoke. So as you can see, Klipoke is over here, and the airstrike was struck here, which means that the Ukrainian forces definitely still have control around here at the very least. If not, they are still around Klipoke or perhaps even the entire Klipoke. But the lack of announcement from any Ukrainian sources claiming capture of Klipoke does put into question whether Klipoke was even captured at all by the Ukrainians. So it may still actually be just in the gray zone. So we move on over at the Staricia. At Staricia on the 12th, yesterday, the Russian forces allegedly was attacking around this area, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. There is no news regarding anything about here. So, and definitely we still have no news about any Russian crossing over the Seversky Donetsk River across Borovka. So that's definitely fake news by now. So we move into the Voschansk sector. At the Battle of Voschansk, the Russian forces have taken grounds. They have basically straightened the entire front line. They have taken everything along the road. And basically this is where the Russians like to hold their defense, and along the highway around here, where they have retaken all the positions. The Russian enclave over here at the aggregate plant, they are still there. The Russian forces are still there. The Ukrainian forces did not manage to kick them out. Despite all this, Ukrainian hope about, they have encircled this group, and then these groups are all going to die and they are all going to be wiped out. Didn't happen. This is why you need to watch DPA, because I already told you it's impossible that they are encircled, given the fact that the Russians are just allegedly on this road. There is still some buildings around here, and this is the park, and the Russians are here. This is hard. You can't encircle anything, in this kind of structure. It's just not possible. You just can't encircle like this. Any Ukrainian forces coming nearby, they will just get attacked. They'll just get attacked by the Russians just as well. So this connection, maybe this is difficult to resupply, but it's definitely doable. It's not near, I know. It's not exactly very near. It's around 200 meters. But I mean, how long you need to run 200 meters? So anyway, it's doable. So it's definitely not encircled. The Ukrainian mapping still draw this as a separate island on its own, and the Russians like this. Like, it's a waste of time. I don't think that's accurate at all. So I don't there's just some cope. Russian forces geolocated attacking entrenchment around here, causing this gray zone to appear, because there's no guarantee the Russians have captured this area. So the front line remains to be there. So we move on. There is at Taike, a Russian airstrike was geolocated at Taike. No more fighting at Taike itself. So that's it from the battle of Voschansk as well as the Kharkiv front. We move into the Kupiansk front. So At the Kupiansk front, the situation here is getting a bit complicated. It is very activated right now. So we have to cut this into half because the map cut is a bit too big. So we cut this half. North Kupiansk and South Kupiansk. So in the northern part of the Kupiansk front, Russian forces are attacking at Sinkivka, Vyshana, as well as Stepova, Novoselivka. As I mentioned before, this looks like a kill zone. The Russians deliberately don't capture it, so this is a trap. The Ukrainian forces make advance over the Liman Pershi region, despite that the fighting was always reported as the Russians attacking at Sinkivka. The advancement of the forest with the Ukrainian forces geolocated here getting struck by a Russian airstrike, which suggests that the Ukrainian mapping may actually be accurate, that the Ukrainians actually have control around here and capture over here. That the Russians may be nearby, maybe there is a gray zone around here that the Russians are defending Liman Pershi from. So this could be actually the actual front line, and this is actually the gray zone, and Ukrainians actually are around here. This might actually be how the front line actually looks like. So, but yeah, these are all forests. It's going to be hard fight, even if the Ukrainians love forests. But by now, all those soldiers that love the forest might actually all be dead by now because the war has dragged on for a long, long time. The Ukrainian soldiers that are very good at fighting in the forest largely are probably all gone by now. So unfortunately, that's the reality of war. There is no reason to continue to reduce the age of the mobilization. No, people struggling to be mobilized and whatnot clearly shows a sign that the Ukrainians may have lost a lot of people, or at least combat troops, either to death or injury. In the southern half of the Kupiansk front, we have the Russian forces attacking at Pishani, Berestove, and Novoselivsky. So there is some rumors about Russians entering into Pishani. Is probably fake news. There is no sources that actually really prove that is the case. Otherwise, the Russians are continuing to hold this position. These are all traps. These are all traps. Even the Pishane, though, there is a possibility that the Russians can capture and go in. The Russians seems to be very slow, or could be Ukrainians are just defending very well. That could also be the possibility. Pishane itself got airstrike as well, so the Russians are definitely treating all these the front line as kill boxes. The Ukrainians do not have the air power right now to do the same thing, but the Ukrainians do have a lot of drones, so that might be the bright side. Over at the Crimea front, Russian forces attacking at Makievka, Nevsky, Terny, Torske, and within the Serbiansky forestry. So the significant one is Makievka. Over at Makievka, Russian forces, as mentioned in the frontline changes report, have basically stabbed the settlement into half. So the Ukrainian forces, if they are still there, is now cut in half. And if you look at the river, you can see that this settlement here is very complicated. So the Russian forces basically cut into half. The other half is trapped by this river. The northern half, they still have the river crossing. So it's very hard to believe that the Ukrainians still have some presence in the south. If they do, they will be escaping or crossing the river as much as they can and try to get out. Maybe go into the high ground where I'm quite sure the Ukrainians have some defenses, overlooking this position. So this is the current situation right here at Makievka. The battle doesn't look very big. There isn't a lot of at least that it doesn't seem to have a lot of reporting to seem to suggest that there's some very big battles around here. Probably we are talking about company size infantry groups fighting each other. That's possibly as much as it goes, I guess. So Ukrainian Defense Ministry is the one that will constantly say that the Russians are attacking. On the Russian side, they basically ignore this entire area except this geolocation that prove that the Ukrainians is not lying, that the Russians are indeed attacking over at Makievka. The next other significant the changes it's not really changes, but there is a airstrike. There's some shelling of Ukrainian forces around here, confirming the frontline posture over in the Serbiansky forestry. Moving into the Sivers front. At the Sivers front, Russian forces attacking at Bilhorivka, Velkomokanyamsky, Vimka, in the north of Vasily and at Rozdolivka. And of significance, of course, is over the situation at the north of Vasily and Rozdolivka. And in this area here, Russian forces have basically straightened the entire front line in the north of Vasily, corroborating Russian claims, and the fact that the Ukrainians also have given up the claim of the southern half of Rozdolivka, confirming the Russians have great success in this area here. So the Russian forces are now advancing pretty much the entire of this front line around here. So Perezne is going to be under threat as the Russian forces is going to head in this direction as we continue to watch this front line. I don't think it's going to be fast unless the Ukrainian line collapsed. If the line did not collapse, I think they can still hold on. There are some trenches along this high ground. The Ukrainian forces can definitely hold up the Russians for quite a long time. So, but if the Russians overrun this area, especially if the Russians do a flanking movement to the rear, these lines would fall, and then all hell breaks loose. So, and of course, it's all hell break loose because the Russians are the evil ones. So they bring hell, they're demons and evil. I know. So this is why all hell break loose. Correct idiom. So we move into the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, in the central flank, there is just generic reports about Russians attacking Chasiv, and there's some fighting reported at Ivaniske. There is no idea, not exactly sure what is the configuration of this fighting around here. So we will just continue to wait. And as I mentioned before, in the southern half of the Bakhmut front feels very activated, and with this geolocation at Klishevka, it looks very serious. Oh, where are we? Let me drink water. I almost died there. Evil Russians. It's all Russians' fault. No. Putin weaponized my throat. Evil Putin. So anyway, where are we? So we're talking about the situation around here. Russian forces basically, seems to have activated this front, and it looks like this southern Bakhmut, South Bakhmut, sector. This entire sector is now in play. There's a strong feeling that the Russians are going to take the entire eastern part of the canal, and this is the first evidence that the Russians are moving. We have this declaration of the capture of Klishevka for a long time, since 22nd of May. And I have always been complaining there is basically no evidence of Russians taking more grounds than this area here. And this is the first evidence of Russian pushing. And let's read what was written. So there is Russian forces under fire by the Ukrainian forces. So the Russians may have already been here for some time, or they may have creeped up into this area while the Ukrainians have already quietly, tactically withdrawn from this area here. That's also a possibility. Timeline, we have no idea. Because there's so little reports coming out from this front, we have no idea what's happening. And there is also further implications of this geolocation because of the terrain in this area. I can show you a bit more. You can see that this is a high ground. This entire area is the high ground, and the Russians have now come up to this position and allegedly under fire, which means that this entire area here can't possibly have Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians at most is going to be at this northern part of the cliff, but however, in this area here we have Russian presence, which means that the Russians is more likely to push into this direction. I zoom in. So Ukrainians will be here now that the Russians are here, and there is Russian presence previously noted here. So it's most likely that the Russians will actually do a pincer movement right now and clear out this entire breach that's overlooking Klishevka and thus securing the entire Klishevka. To believe that Ukrainian forces have any positions in this lower ground is a bit hard to imagine, given how the Russians have already strong presence around in Klishevka. They could have just wiped them out. So which is possibly that they have already left and the Russians have already taken this position. So with this, we can even imagine that the Russians have already taken the entire high ground around Klishevka in this area here. barring maybe in the southern part, the Ukrainians may still have positions defending Andriivka. That is a possibility. I'm just saying that this is just some analysis, of some possibility. I'm not saying this is the truth. I'm just saying that this is just possible. So which means that if this is the configuration, then the Russians may have also already taken the entire of this southeastern part of Klishevka as well. So we will continue to watch, but the fact that there is some action around here does raise suspicion that the Russians may actually be pushing. So let's see how this develop. Maybe this part of the front is going to start to get exciting again. If you're watching this like a football match, it's going to be very exciting. If you're watching this as a concerned relative of the Ukrainian and the Russian side, it's just horrible news. They're going to die. They're going to fight again. So, best wishes to your relative. There is war. So hopefully the war will end sometime soon. We move into the New York front. At the New York front, as usual, it's cut into two sectors, the Torets and the New York sector. At the Torets sector, Russian forces are still attacking in multiple directions. We have fighting at Druzhba, at Pivnishny region, Zalizny, and in the area of Pivdeny. So the Russian forces are still trying to get better foothold, I guess, because this area is just very complicated. It's just full of entrenchment. There is various geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting hit by FPV drone and guided missiles. So clearly show that the Ukrainians have arrived at the scene, and they are definitely defending. Particularly the geolocation over at Zalizny talks about Ukrainian tank counterattack. So the armored counterattack has already begun over at Zalizny. So Russian forces defending in this area here shows that the Russians may have already traveled. Maybe they even have this area. There's a possibility, but we can't be sure because there's trenches around there. So I dare not assume that the Russians are there for now. So I draw it in this way, the most direct way I can draw it. And the Ukrainians are now on the counter. So they are definitely drawing attention for sure. Which is why there is this guided missile strike. Is just a sign of the battle around this area here. The Russians have not been noted to have firm control of the this high-rise zone because there is no evidence of any geolocation or whatnot. There is also no news regarding whether the Russians have actually expanded control around here. Everything is now operational silence because this is the active front line, and I think a lot of the movement are just now operational secret. So we just have to continue to wait and for more information to unfold and to be revealed by the warring sides from both sides before we will be able to know more stuff. Ukrainians definitely do not have a poor position around here. Actually, if you look at there is a major castle around here, and there's another castle around here. Basically, these are castles. It looks just like a castle, and there's another fortress around here. So these are all various high grounds that they can actually overlook the Russians, and so they can definitely have better intel or the situation around here. You can see how this looks like. These are just abnormal hills. These are probably dumps from the mines or something previously. So but there's a lot of forest around here. So intel, the intel and management of your forces around here is going to be very, very challenging because your enemies is going to be able to travel into the forest, and you do not know where they go. And there's a lot of place to hide as well within the forest, and also a lot of buildings for them to hide. So this is going to be a hard battle. I think the initial shock of the Russian pushing through is already over. The Ukrainians have established the front line pretty firmly right now. So I don't expect the Ukrainian lines to continue to collapse. So this Zalizny one is definitely also part of the initial push. We just don't have the intel. Maybe the Russians have already have some firm control around here that we are not aware of, and this is not just a sudden capture. Definitely the Russians, I believe, has already been here for some time, because it only makes sense that the Russians in their push north would have pushed out. So yeah, it is what it is. Over in the New York sector at the New York front, Russian forces have not made any more advances around this extreme end of the New York front, there is geolocation of Russian airstrike in the middle of New York. Clearly showed that the Ukrainians have some presence around here already in the center. They are preparing to fight the Russians, but the Russians are now busying themselves with expanding their their foothold to secure this entire foothold, because there is always the danger. As much as you think that this is a huge penetration, this penetration can be chopped off. The Ukrainian forces can just pincer it and chop it off, and then you'll be in massive pain. So the Russians definitely will have to continue to expand this buttress region to make it bigger, and then it will be more secure. Gray zone for the Ukrainian mapping is pretty huge around here, because they have no idea where the hell the fighting is actually is as well. So they only know where the firm control is. So definitely there is some no give and take in terms of where the gray zones are. So we move into the Avdiivka front. At the northern flank of the Avdiivka front, Russian forces are still attacking some Ukrainian forces around the Kalinove region. As I mentioned, this is a citadel or fortress region, so I don't expect the Russians to push through Kalinove. However, they are attacking in the area of Novo Oleksandrivka towards Vodizenka, Lozovatsky, Progress, Yekhanivka, and there is some announcement of Voshod. Ukrainian Defense Ministry continue to report about fighting around Sokyu, which is probably inaccurate. I think they're just coping. Definitely the fighting is not at Sokyu anymore. The front line have already moved past Sokyu, and the most significant, of course, is Vodizenka Oleksandrivka region, as well as in the Voshod region. Over at the Vodizenka Oleksandrivka region, Russian forces previously have taken this entire tree line, and the fact that they can travel this far may also suggest that Ukrainians may not be here, which is why the Russians have also expanded their control since, and definitely strengthening their foothold to allow them to have this jumping I can't remember the word, jumping spot or whatever, for them to hit into Vodizenka. But like I mentioned before, the Russians don't really like to do this that much. They would prefer another angle of attack. So, which is what happened in Novoselivka, Persia, which I'll talk about later. They did not just push in immediately. They actually find another angle as well to attack from two different directions. So this is definitely just one foothold. The Russians are going to hold the positions around here while they make another push, probably from the south of Vodizenka, before they can actually do an attack. So this is what is going to likely develop around here. Russian forces geolocated in the south of Novo Oleksandrivka, so that's one thing. The push toward Progress and Lozovatsky, no more news about that. Over at the Voshod, the Russian Defense Ministry have announced the capture of Voshod. We have first reported this on the 3rd of July, according to information from Deep State UA, and however, the Russian Defense Ministry only have just announced it after 1 week. So drink water time. Wait, back from drinking water because long day and I drank a lot of coffee today, so maybe dehydrated. So Russian forces geolocated in Voshod as well as just off Sokyu, of them being around and doing clearing operation and raising a flag in Voshod. So this definitely confirms Russian presence around here, and the fighting supposed and should be within Yekhanivka region. The Russians probably are holding position right now because there's a lot of trenches around here, a lot of buildings around here, I think, and of course all the forest line. I think the Russians need some time to do clearing operations, because if you keep pushing, then you will eventually run into a trap. So I think the Russians are now consolidating their forces around Sokyu, and rather than the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's report about fighting at Sokyu, I think that's inaccurate, given how the front line have already moved on from Sokyu. So over at Novoselivka, Persia, as I mentioned earlier, the Russian forces have indeed attacked from the north. So they have geolocated around this industrial zone, and according to the Ukrainian mapping, they have now penetrated into near the center of Novoselivka, Persia. The attack come from 3 different directions. This is one direction from the north. Another direction is coming from the south, northeast. The Russians are pushing in from the northeast, and another direction is coming from the northwest. So these are the three different directions the Russians are attacking in, and we're probably going to see a penetration in the western part very, very soon. And the Russian forces is going to expand southward in the east, because the Ukrainian forces over in this part, in the eastern part, is unlikely to hold their positions because they are way too far from the path, the route of escape. And this is going to heavily affect the psychology of the Ukrainian forces holding the front line around here, because they will be thinking about the Russians already coming to the center. They need to run, so they may run or they may go south and try to go one big round around, to escape. There's a possibility, but the fact that they need to go one big round may actually encourage them to retreat, unless they have very good commanders, and the commanders manage to give the troops on the front line the confidence to hold position, and that they give them the assurance that reinforcement, resupply is going to come. So otherwise, this is looking very bad, as this push in this entire collapse of the north is just horrendous. It's just one big chunk of land just lost over 24 hours. So Russian forces taking the entire heavy entrenchment just put Novosibirsk, Persha's fate to rest. So this is a very, very terrible situation for the Ukrainian forces. And the main push is going to be ending on the west. They're going to push out in this area. They're going to have this another chunk, and then Novosibirsk, Persha is gone. It's just end. So unless the Ukrainians can muster up some big force, but why have a big force here? Also, it will be strategically pointless. So I'm not sure what the Ukrainians should do at this juncture. I think that they should form a new seriously strong line in the rear position, but you can see that the heavy entrenchments is the trenches are all over the place. So where is exactly the clear line? I have no idea. So they have to decide where to hold their grounds. Clearly, this area is where they decided to hold their ground, but they are not clearly holding the ground very well. Russian forces are still fighting in the area of Yasno-Brodivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Despite that, the Russian Defense Ministry have announced that they have captured it since 9th of July. But we have no mapping to confirm that the Russians have captured it, so we are just continuing to wait. Kharkivka continues to be contested, but I think the fighting here has went really down. On both days, Kharkivka was mentioned by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry to be fighting. But from my sensing, from just my gut feeling, the Russian forces are not making serious push right here. They did previously, but no longer, because they have failed to do so. Probably people had died for nothing. So the Russians probably is going to wait for now. This is a bad place to push, because this is a choke point, and the Ukrainians can probably defend it really easily. So that's all from the Avdiivka front. We move into the Battle of Krasnohorivka. There is nothing nothing to report. There's just fighting around here. Okay, so you zoom out a bit. So in this Marinka sector, Russian forces are attacking at Krasnohorivka, Georgievka, Paraskovievka, and Konstantinivka. So this is just a very general thing. There is no much details of this part of the Donetsk front. We move on into the Voleda line. At the Voleda line, we have fighting reported in the direction of Vodian, and we have some fighting reported in the direction of Prashitivka. Geolocation of a Russian guided missile strike might actually be just exactly what this report is talking about. So because the Russians simply mentioned about attacking Ukrainian forces at Prashitivka, but which could be anything. It could be artillery, guided missile, airstrike. So maybe this guided missile is exactly what it was. So not exactly an infantry assault. So otherwise, Vodian, there is still this attack. I've got a sense that the Russians have already advanced quite a bit, but it was just not reported. So we just continue to wait and wait for more information to be unveiled. Usually, the geolocation will precede the map changes. Like for example, there are certain grounds, certain front line they have already collapsed, but the deep state UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, may not want to talk about it until geolocations came out, and then they have no choice but to accept and admit it, because the deep state UA should know better. because they work together with the Ukrainian defense ministry, and the Ukrainian forces on the ground actually uses deep state UA's mapping. So to understand the general situation on the ground. So I'm quite sure that they may have a more accurate version. Of course, Ukrainian forces, the more elite troops definitely have a much more American provided mapping and intel, which is totally different from what Deep State UA is providing. Over at the Velika Novosibirsk sector, the worst nightmare has arrived for the Ukrainian forces. Russian forces seems to have taken the entire of Uruzhaine. Based on the geolocation, is pretty much the entire of Uruzhaine, but we cannot confirm this just yet because this geolocations of Russian forces, and then I'm mapping it based on what I perceive to be the situation, but almost certainly Uruzhaine is probably has already been captured by the Russian forces, because they raised a flag here, one flag at this northern part. I think there's another flag here, yeah. So they have raised the flag in this position and this position. So it's basically confirmation that the Russians have captured the center part and the northern part, and I'm just being careful. I don't want to just call this prematurely, but Uruzhaine is now under Russian control, and so there is geolocation of Ukrainian forces that was doing a tactical retreat. There was a tank getting hit by FPV drone, I believe, or no, detonation of ammunition. So not sure how they destroyed. I didn't watch the video. So yeah, the Russian forces have basically overrun the position. Ukrainian forces retreat from this area probably is heading to Blahodane because there's no river crossing around here. So they have to go to Blahodane. And Ukrainian forces are holding their ground at Makarivka, with the Russian forces reportedly attacking Makarivka. Otherwise, there's no updates yet. But once the Russians have taken Uruzhaine and Staromayoske, which is the twin settlement, there is a bridge linking the two. This will provide the Russians with significant improvement in terms of the logistic and the movement of troops, which now the Ukrainians do not have. I think the next bridge moving up north, where is it? The next bridge is all the way at Velika Novosibirsk. Yeah. So this was where I always say that the Ukrainians need to capture, and the Ukrainians did capture it eventually during the counteroffensive in 2023. So now that they lost this, the entire chain here is going to be lost one by one, because it's just impossible to support each other on the left and right flank, right bank of the river. Left, right bank of the river cannot support each other, and it's just going to be one after another until Velika Novosibirsk and Vremivka, where the Ukrainians would be able to hold a strong defense. Whether the Russians wanted to go this far, it really depends, because the Russians have different objective from what some of you guys may think. Because despite I talk about frontline changes, right, as the core most important thing in this war, the Russians also have different objectives, because they may just want to hold a kill box to destroy the Ukrainian forces before they do an attack. And the fact that the Russians now doing certain frontline doing attacks, and they are having success, shows that their previous actions at destroying the Ukrainian forces has been successful. So there is things to note, and the Ukrainian forces are dropping back. Just shows that they are struggling. You may be pro-Ukrainian, but you have to accept that it is not in the Ukrainian mentality to retreat. No, the Ukrainians like to hold their ground. They want to defend as much as they can, because that's their whole mission. And to lose ground, even as a tactical move, is nearly unheard of. Like, the Ukrainians almost never retreat. Retreat to counterattack. Like, they never do that. No, I have never seen that happen before, or at least not in a bigger scale. So because they know that once they leave a position, they struggle to get it back. So the Ukrainians end up don't practice maneuver warfare. So to you have to retreat a lot of grounds, force their enemies into the open, then you can counterattack, flank them, and then there's a maneuver warfare. If you do not, if you're unwilling to move, then you're just going to sit and die. And so unfortunately, that seems to be the case, and that seems to be one of these major, hallmark of this Ukraine war, which is why it's always referred to as trench warfare. We move into the Zaporizhia front. At the Zaporizhia front, we still have fighting being reported at Huyaipole, and it's important to note that both Russian and Ukrainian defense ministry have reported fighting in the Huyaipole region on the 11th of July. There is no reports about the fighting around here. It's unclear where the Russians attacked from. I wonder if it's from Mafopil attacking up the road. That could also be possible. So, but then no, both have reported about it, but it did not go on. So I wonder if this is just a test of the Ukrainian defense around here. Over at the eastern side, Russian forces are attacking Malatomashka, Robotini, and then there's this cluster over at the Kayamsky sector, fighting at Kayamsky, Zerebianki, and Pyatikaki. This is interesting because they are all together at the same time on the 11th of July. Again, there is no more reports about this on the 12th of July. Mainly because the Russians have a weekly summary, so we do not have the information. Maybe they do continue the attack. So, as such, it's important to take note that there might be something big happening around here. The only way to know is tomorrow. Tomorrow or the day after, then we will know for sure whether this is an ongoing offensive. This is a new offensive beginning from the Russian forces to break the Zaporizhia front. So anyway, we just wait and see how this develop. We move on to the Kherson front. At the Kherson front, Russian forces are still attacking the bridgehead of the Ukrainians, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, on the 11th of July. So probably at Pniprovsky. But that's about it. Otherwise, there's just a lot of shelling reported from the Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry, both defense ministries, and Mykolaiivka, Tiekhinka, Ivanivka, and Tokarivka. So these are the various locations mentioned by both sides. That there are Russian shelling being reported. There is no geolocations about the stuff here. So that's about it. So this is the situation report, or the summary for the day of 869 to 870 for the 11th to the 12th of July. A lot of major updates. So again, subscribe over at DPA War, help to grow that channel as well. And I don't want to bore you with algorithm issues of why you need to subscribe, but just subscribe. Trust me, no, I won't lead you astray. No, I have been doing this for so long. No, when have I lead you astray? So thank you for watching. Do press the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next update.